All right, this is Chapter 6, Lesson 5, Algebra, and we're talking about properties. So there are three properties that I actually want to talk to you about: the commutative, the associative, and the identity property. These are the three properties that you'll most often use during algebra. So the first one I want to talk about is commutative. Now, commutative is also called the switcheroo property. So basically it means no matter what order you put the numbers in, the answer should still be the same. Now, commutative works for addition and multiplication. So it doesn't matter if it's 4 plus 5 or 5 plus 4. You'll still get an answer of 9. Okay, so that's the commutative property, the switcheroo property. The associative property is the friendship property. Okay, so no matter how you group the numbers, your answer will still be the same. Usually you'll use the associative property if you have a grouping symbol, like a parentheses or a bracket. Okay, so you might have something like 2 plus 3 in parentheses. So the quantity 2 plus 3 plus 4. Okay, that's the same thing as saying 2 plus the quantity 3 plus 4. Doesn't matter which order you do them in, they're the friendship property. They'll still end up being the same answer. The last one I want to talk to you about is the identity property. The identity property is the all about me property. Okay? It means that when I add by 0, or the identity, I get the same answer, or when I multiply by 1, I get the same answer. Okay? So when you add 0 to any number, the sum is the same, or when you multiply anything by 1, the answer is the same. So there's an identity property for addition, an identity property for multiplication. There's an associative property for addition and multiplication, and there's a commutative property for addition or multiplication, depending on which symbols you're using. Okay? All right, so blank are statements that are true for any number. So in that blank, you're going to write property. So properties are statements that are true for any number. The expressions 6 times 10 and 10 times 6 are called blank, blank. And those two blanks are going to write equivalent expressions. So they're called equivalent expressions because they have the same value. Doesn't matter if you do 6 times 10 or 10 times 6, you're still going to get an answer of 60. So they're equivalent expressions, they're the same. This illustrates the commutative property. Remember we talked about the commutative, the switcheroo property? Okay, properties can also be used to write equivalent expressions and to solve problems. So let's look at a couple of examples. So example number 1 says determine whether the two expressions are equivalent. If so, tell what property is applied. If not, explain why. Okay, so make sure you're reading through the directions and you're following each step of the directions so you don't lose points. So number 1 says 15 plus, in parentheses, 5 plus 8, and parentheses, 15 plus 5 plus 8. The numbers are grouped differently. Okay? They are equivalent by the associative property, by the friendship property. So we can use an equal sign to compare the expressions. So 15 plus the quantity 5 plus 8 equals the quantity 15 plus 5 plus 8. Okay? You can always solve these and try to figure it out as well. I know that 5 plus 8 plus 15 would still give me something that's equal to 15 plus 5 plus 8. Number 2, I have the quantity 20 minus 12 minus 3 and 20 minus the quantity 12 minus 3. Okay? They're not equivalent. Go ahead and try to solve them. 20 minus 12 gives me 8. 8 minus 3 gives me 5. Okay, so this one right here is 5. So then I do 20 minus 12 minus 3. Remember, you need to do what's inside the parentheses first. So 12 minus 3 is 9, and then 20 minus 9 is 11. So 5 and 11 are not equal to each other, so the associative property does not hold true for subtraction. All right, number 3, in a recent season, the Kansas Jayhawks had 15 guards, 4 forwards, and 3 centers on their roster. Write 2 equivalent expressions using the associative property that can be used to find the total number of players on their roster. So, the associative property states that the grouping of numbers when they're added does not change the sum. Remember, sum's addition. Okay? So I can write this as 15 plus 4 plus 3. 15 guards plus 4 forwards plus 3 centers. Now I can write them using the associative property, which means I just have to use grouping symbols. So what I can do is I can take and group each of those 3 numbers differently. So I can group 15 plus 4, and then I can group 4 plus 3. Either way, I'll get the same answer because it's an associative property using addition, meaning it doesn't matter what way I group my numbers, I'll still get the same answer. All right. Now you should get a paper that looks like this. It's yellow. Okay? Yours might be a different color, depends on what paper we have available. What you're going to do is actually cut these out. Okay? Each one of these out. Okay? Then you're going to do a property sort. You have 3 properties: associative, commutative, and identity. What you're going to do is figure out which one of these properties are for associative, which ones are for commutative, and which ones for identity. Then you're going to glue them into your ISN. You're going to glue them on page 25. Okay? You should have this page right now for 24. You're going to glue them on 25. Okay? So you'll do whichever one you want to do first. You could do associative and then list the properties for associative. Then you can do for commutative and list the properties for commutative. And then you can do identity at the bottom if you want to do that. But somehow I need to know which of the properties on that yellow sheet, this yellow sheet right here, are associative, commutative, and the identity. Once you have them glued in, bring the book up to me and I'll check it for correct. All right, this is Chapter 6, Lesson 5, the properties foldable. So you should get a blue sheet of paper that looks like this. It has a front and a back to it. What you're going to do is you're going to cut along the solid lines all the way around. Okay? When you're done with that, you're going to fold it in half and unfold it, and you're going to cut along these dotted lines here, these small dashed lines. Okay? And then you'll glue it on page 26 in your ISN. So you're going to glue it on page 26 in your ISN. And I'll show you what a finished one looks like. This is what your foldable should look like once it's glued in. As you can see, I cut along the dotted lines, so I can basically flip each one of these open and I can read what's underneath. And that is the end of Chapter 6, Lesson 5.